Thank you very much for those of you who have stayed and waited for me. Hopefully it is worth the few minutes that we're going to spend together. My name is Eric Guerra, and though I live in Napa, California, I feel like I'm back home. I grew up in New Jersey. I got a mom from Long Island, and so I am indoctrinated into the East Coast ways. My dad was a chef at the Rockaway Country Club, and I grew up on Italian food, so you know that after this, though I was a little late here, I'm going to be heading out to some Italian food for lunch, well, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Just want to make sure I got this. This is Green Arrow. All right, thank you. It's called On the Fly. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you for being patient while I figured it out. I'm already one taste in from everybody here, so I'll make this as brief and concise and hopefully as inspiring as possible so you can get onto that tasting that I was just doing while you guys were all hanging out here waiting for me. So we're going to talk today about how to market and grow the distribution of luxury brands. We're going to start off with talking about what is luxury. I'm going to come down here with you guys because you can see the slide a little bit better. I love this slide because if you look at the brands on here, and probably most of you are familiar with them, and you look at the retail price points on them. Now can you believe this, there's two things that these brands all have in common. There's actually two things. You got a little Santa Margherita up there at $18. And by the way, I think I'm being kind at 18. It probably retails 20, 25. Seen it for crazy prices, brilliant brand. DRC at $20,000. I'm sure that it's probably been sold more than that at auctions up to date. Kendall-Jackson at $13, which is a pretty good price. Maison, again, very high-priced wine. The first thing that they all have in common is just something very basic, the grape juice. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. You got a $20,000 bottle of grape juice, and I know that it's made differently, made from a different place, made from different people, but it is still grape juice in the bottle at the end of the day. Just like Kendall-Jackson is when I managed it, when it was close to 3 million cases of Chardonnay every year. The second thing is they have a luxury perception. Now that's where they all share a commonality. Now again, saying that Santa Margherita and DRC have a commonality, or at least two of them, is 100% accurate. And the reason why, because if you look at that Kendall-Jackson at $13, my mother, who I've given her an ocean of wine over the last 17 years being in the business, loves Kendall-Jackson. Now her everyday drinking wine is a lower end Chardonnay, but her luxury wine, her weekend wine, her something special is $13. And again, it still kills me. I just called her the other day and she was sitting there and I could hear her, I don't know about you guys have this issue, but I give her wine all the time. And I could hear her swirling it because I taught her how to swirl. And she puts ice cubes in the glass and you can hear the ice hit the sides of the glass. And I'm like, oh, Mom, you're killing me. You know this is my profession, right? I said, just please tell me that it's not red wine. She goes, no, it's the Chardonnay. I'm like, oh, well, now I'm feeling okay about it. I'm like, oh, good, you put the ice in the Chardonnay. That's fantastic, right? But to her, it's a luxury wine. To her, Kendall-Jackson is her weekend, Saturday night, going out, having something special. Just like DRC is maybe to us, maybe not us, but Vineyard 29 at $265 a bottle. They're all luxury perception. Now, the word perception is something we're going to focus on because I've been fortunate to manage some of the greatest luxury brands in the world, and they were excellent before I got them. My job was not to screw them up. But I also learned quite a bit from them, and the one thing that I learned was the word perception is almost 99% of everything that we focused on. I love this quote by Coco Chanel. I love this. Luxury is a necessity that begins when necessity ends. I know that we like to believe that wine is a necessity, but it is not. It's not air. It's not food. You know, even a car kind of gets you from point A to point B to be able to get to work and survive and make a living. But wine is not a necessity. It becomes a luxury, anything becomes a luxury when you make it a necessity in someone's life. That they feel like you need to have Kendall-Jackson Chardonnay rather than something that's $2, $3, $4, $5, $2 chuck kind of stuff. Because it's not a necessity, but when the person that buys it feels that it's a necessity, of course then you become a luxury item. Now think about some of the things in your life that you love, right? I love gin, for example. And I've graduated all the years, or golf. People do this in golf all the time. You graduate from the clubs that you get at Walmart, all the way up through the Titleists and to the Callaways. You find that these other clubs, and though they're quality and you can play golf better, last time I checked, I went out with a guy the other day and he had rental clubs, and he beat me blue with crappy clubs, and I had my cool Callaway, because there was a perception that my Callaways are just far better than his. Now, the fact is, you can hit a golf ball with a great golf club. He was just a much better player than me. But there was a perception that I needed to spend $3,000 on clubs when this guy was walking around with $50 clubs. So the perception, it is an immensely powerful thing. Now let's take a look at this from some other kind of visuals. These are all luxury brands. Luxury can come in many different ways. Now, as I show you these slides, think about some of your wine brands, right? Now, some of the wine brands that we showed before, some of the labels, some of the packaging, not crazy. Some of them are over the top, like Champagne, Moet de Chandon. And then some of them are very understated. So it's all perception. It's not the packaging as much. Style. So luxury can be style. Luxury can be speed, masculinity, darkness, mystery. Luxury can be a celebration. It doesn't even have to be a thing. It could be a feeling, all right? Us in the champagne worlds, and I manage some of the greatest champagne brands in the world, we created a world that celebration is a luxury item. You drink your Prosecco during the week, but you got to have your Perrier-Jouët during the weekend. Luxury can be class and charm and just total awesomeness. And luxury can be irreverent and rock and roll. You guys are probably familiar with John Varvatos here. Some parts of the world that I talk in, John Varvatos is not very well known. But if you just look at all the brands, if you think about the brands that I just mentioned, John Varvatos that's those suits, right? They look great. They're rock and roll skinny, but they look great. But those are $5,000, $8,000 suits. That's a luxury perception, because you could still get by with a really nice $1,000, $2,000, $500 suit. It look great standing next to these guys. But John Varvatos proved to people that I'm going to put together a suede jacket, and you're going to spend $8,000 for a suede jacket. And again, you can go down the street, find an awesome suede jacket, but he created a perception, a price point that and think about it, it's rock and roll. This is not considered the other, like the Omega watch. This is not considered, the foofy luxury stuff. This is just pure rock and roll that he made this world off of. Steven Tyler and these knuckleheads. It was all perception. It was all perception. The Porsche, you can still get from point A to point B to work, but for some reason we feel that you just get there better in a Porsche. So the perception is pretty strong with these brands. And I wanted to talk a little bit about luxury because, again, as I mentioned before, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to manage some of the greatest wine brands in the world. Some of them really iconic. Some of them have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I've seen what works, and I've seen what hasn't worked. I've been in the boardrooms, and you guys know that the cool tasting that I was just doing out there is really 1% of our business. That 99% of the business I've spent in boardrooms and offices, albeit some of them in really nice wineries, which is not a bad thing. But I've been able to see some of the great things that have been able to work. Now, there's a few we're going to talk about today, and how do they stay relevant? Now, again, I know we're talking about luxury, but you would think that we would just focus on like a Perrier-Jouët or a GH Mumm or a Gary Farrell, which is a Russian River, beautiful brand. But I believe when I was at KJ, we treated that brand like a luxury brand, even though the Chardonnay was almost 3 million. My total responsibility was close to 6 million cases of wine. And when I looked at the categories, in our category, we were one of the highest priced ones in every category. Now this was 12 years ago, but still, our Cab, our Syrah, our Sauvignon Blanc was always the highest price. And Jess Jackson was alive at that time, and he talked about that often. And I didn't realize at that point I was learning about luxury. I was learning about luxury to the people that we were selling. And he tapped into a luxury market at a very, very big level. That's very, very unique. At Vineyard 29, it was all about 2,000 cases and how far could we spread just a few thousand cases and what the price points we can get to. But one thing I realized about all these brands, and I'm not showing you the failures and all the other goofy brands that I managed, but how did these few brands stay relevant? Well, You know, again, in the wine industry, the one cool thing, just like me, is everybody thinks that they know everything. You get in the room with somebody that's been in the business for 30 years or within 1 or 2 years, and we go through a very complex process. You wouldn't imagine that sitting there, you know, you go through the data, you come to all these decisions, you have a guy in the room or a person in the room that thinks they know it all, and yeah, let's all run through a wall. This is what typically happens. I find that going around in the spin cycle, I feel like sometimes my head gets a little crazy in some of these rooms talking about strategy for some of these luxury wines. And sometimes we got too busy, not focused, didn't think about the right things, tried to affect things that were not in our control. And this is what typically will happen. Just things get busy, they get crazy, they get out of control, and especially when you're talking about champagne brands, when you're selling one case for thousands of dollars and it's highly allocated, you know, just like anything else, like music or any other luxury art items like art. If you're a supplier and you're popular, a lot of money starts coming in, a lot of opinions start coming in, and you get a little crazy. So the one thing that I noticed with some of these brands, there was always, the ones that were successful, there was always someone there to make the final decision, like a Kendall-Jackson or Barbara Banke. There was always someone there at Perrier-Jouët with the Ricard family that were able to make the final decision. And when they said, okay, like, let the noise kind of calm down, and we're going to go in this direction. So the four things that I noticed, there's probably 4,000, but 4 things that I noticed that these brands all had in common. Number one, they were always able to make a decision of what was in our control and what was not. Now, I know these are going to sound a little trivial, by the way, but if I really take a step back, and there's, like I said, a million things that happen throughout the day with your marketing team and your sales team, and this is the 4 things that I realized that every luxury wine brand that was successful absolutely held. We were able to focus, stay what was in our control. And I know that sounds like a simple thing, but like I said, when these teams get large or these brands get popular or famous and things seem to get a little bit out of control, but stay focused. Every one of them stayed focused. And one of the companies that I worked for, we wrote on the board, every time we walked into a conference room, we wrote on the board the brand statement. And after we had this long discussion about someone like the Oscars one time wanted me to donate all the wine, and we stopped and said, will the brand benefit, the statement benefit from it? After all the BS and all the, oh my God, Eric, millions of people will see it, and Matthew McConaughey will drink it, and it's on TV, and we just made the decision that it wasn't worth the price because it didn't hold true to the statement. We were able to focus. We got away from the fuzzy things and the bright things and the lights and all the Vegas-y stuff and just shrunk down and said, no, it does not adhere to our brand standards. It's not something we want to do. The second thing is your sphere of influence, and this has something to do with focus. Now, this sphere of influence slide has to do with luxury brands. Now, other brands have different things that you can't influence on the outside, but this has to do, let's say, with the Vineyard 29. Vineyard 29 that I managed in St. Helena was a 100-point Robert Parker rated wine. He rated it himself, absolutely adored this state. We had a Sauvignon Blanc that we would sell out at $185. It would sell out in 3 liters. Never really understood who was drinking 3 liters, but it sounded like a fun party of Sauvignon Blanc. But this was something that we focused on quite a bit. We had a very small team, and I'm sure many of you do here as well. So you have to focus on the things that you can influence, and it's really, really hard. Now, if we got a 98, and you guys know that Premier is going on right now, so the whole 98, 97, 92, it's all going nuts. You know, the big Bordeaux houses focus heavily on the scores. Well, they don't, but we do as when we buy them on the investment market. And you know that you have no influence over what Antonio is going to rate you, or Jeb. You have no influence. I've met these guys. They're outstanding individuals. They're brilliant people. They go through 1 billion wines in one day. I've watched them. It's just no way to influence Lisa's opinion. You got to step back from it. You got to say, I did my best. The one thing that we had control over was the quality of the wine. Great. Or the packaging. Or the culture. Make sure that the people are happy and everybody's behind the brand. New brand launch or the brand standards. Partnerships. Who we associated with at Vineyard 29. We associated with Meadowwoods and Lexus. Those things we had control over. But at the end of the day, I had no control over what Antonio was going to give our wine. And that's okay. Give it a 93, give it a 100. If it comes in high, awesome. If it doesn't, we're still fine. We're confident to know that we are excellent at what we do. And that's what luxury brands have. Now, if the outside influence comes in, all that much better. But if it doesn't, you still got to have that arrogance and confidence to know that whatever you build, what you represent, is absolutely enough to get it done. The third thing is perfection. Now, this is really, really important. I've been brought into some very, very difficult situations. And again, you guys work in wine, so you understand what I'm saying. When you go work for Pernod Ricard and you're managing Perrier-Jouët in the US, you're under the microscope. Not only because it brings in a couple bucks, listen, Absolute and the spirits from a bottom line standpoint just blow it out of the water, right? 2% growth in Absolute wipes out any loss that Perrier-Jouët would have throughout the year. But still, there's a perception, there's a legacy, and there's money. But it is held up as like the baby of the portfolio, the crown jewels. So when you get that job, you have to be perfect. Think about if you're a sous chef, and one of my friends was a sous chef at French Laundry. When you walk in that door, or at Alinea in Chicago, when you walk in that door, you're expected to be at the highest level. There is a culture of excellence. Every one of the brands that I managed had that. Now, some of the other ones that I didn't put up there did not. Jess Jackson at Kendall-Jackson absolutely had perfection. The most brilliant team I've ever worked for, of people that would, get bounced around quite a bit by the whims of a billionaire winery owner. But at the end of the day, they were absolutely amazing at what they did and really, really quality people. I love every place that I've worked, like a Mumm Napa, the legacy that they have and the excellence that they have. And the last thing is, and I know this is kind of like a little left turn, the other ones were cultural and focus, distribution. I've worked for wines that should have been famous, that were outstanding. I've worked for wines that were excellent at one point and fell off. But the one thing that I noticed with the wines that stayed relevant, the brands, the luxury brands that stayed relevant, was they were outstanding at distribution. Now, I worked for Rick Tigner was the head of sales at KJ, and now he's the president for many years. The guy was, and I'm sure many of you here know him, brilliant at distribution. Brilliant. Very, very good. But when I say that, I don't mean that just going to your wholesaler, retail, and broker network and saying, hey guys, we got this new item, roll it out, have all these expectations, have my Wharton graduate brand manager put together a 80-page presentation and go crazy on the crowd and say, it's only 80 pages. I think I could do 100, Eric. All right, great. They'll bore the hell out of them much earlier then. That's awesome. Now that we were able to put a distribution plan together that was real. And they usually worked with their wholesalers and retailers beforehand. They went to some of the top places like Wally's and said, if we launch this, what price point would work? And of course, it was always lower than we're going to launch it. If we launch this, what could you do with this? Where should we go with this? And Safeway and anywhere else that we were going to distribute these items. We got the input of, at that time, Glazers, Southern Wine, whoever it was we were working with, the Young's Market guys. So that when we went to distribution, we were already had people saying yes. It wasn't just bombing them when we walked in the door and said, hey, your allocation's 20,000 cases. Be happy about that because the guy across the street is 30. Or even on a luxury item, hey, I'm giving you 5 cases. And the guy's like, great, sounds awesome. I'll just lose it in the back of the warehouse. I'll sell it in 11 months when I get around to the next allocation. Sounds good. And that happens quite a bit. They were all excellent at distribution, thinking one step ahead, trying to get to the customer, having, like Kendall-Jackson actually built a team that was customer-facing. Jess Jackson used to talk about that. He's like, I got to give help to the people that are selling our wine. I got to get into Texas. I got to go to wherever it is, Landry's, and we have to sell them on our wine because then everybody will benefit from it. He had that forethought. So, those are the 4 things that I noticed all my luxury brands absolutely held as characteristics. Now, if you're in the process of building a luxury brand, this presentation is, let's say if you're a supplier or a negotiant and you're thinking about building your own luxury brand, or you have one and it's sputtered a little bit. Now, and I say that I got a great example from G.H. Mumm. We all know the brand. By the way, it was one of the most, I'm going to always get this incorrect, but it was one of the most imported wines at one point in the entire country. I think back in the 40s, you see them on the movies and Some Like It Hot and everything. Mumm was everywhere. It was the #1 imported wine at some point. And it tailed off, and when I grabbed it, it was at 20,000 cases, probably half of what I drank of it in 1 year. What a disaster. It pained my heart to see that. So how do you bring a luxury brand back from the dead. Or, so you talk about resuscitation, but also, let's say if you're building one or if you have one and you've lost your way. These are the things that will keep it going or at the highest level. Convey scarcity and exclusivity. Now, I know that's funny, because again, we talk about, let's say, a Vineyard 29, where I launch 400 cases of a $300 cab. It's easy to convey scarcity just by saying you have 5, you have 4, you have 3, and after that, you're done. But you can also convey scarcity at a very high level. You can convey scarcity with a 30,000 case brand. I know that doesn't sound like possible, but you can. First off, you can convey it by just telling people that they only have a certain amount of allocation. You can do this direct to consumer as well, but for all intents and purposes, we're talking about 3-tier here. Convey scarcity and exclusivity even when scarcity is not an issue. Ooze special. I could tell you right now that some of the, when you go to Champagne, you guys know this, the grower champagnes are amazing, right? Paul Roger, amazing. But when I was at Perrier-Jouët, I would sit there and tell you that it is the most special, the most specialer, right? Champagne in the world. I drank the Kool-Aid, ate the dog food, however you want to say it. It was outstanding. Was it the best? No, but when we were there, we truly believed, and I still do now, that it's a quality product. It's an outstanding champagne. It oozes special. It oozes excellence. And I got bought into it. When you go to the winery and the chef de caves tells you the history and you see the maisons and you see how they make it, you're bought in. So you have to have that confidence, arrogance almost, cockiness, that when someone asks you about the Bentley, I promise you the Bentley team is saying, yeah, no, we have the greatest car in the world. And that's absolutely without a doubt. Price high with confidence. Very, very difficult to do. Very difficult, especially with the larger brands. I understand with everything I say, there's a bottom line. And I promise you, I've worked for companies that had, that were public. So everything was under the microscope. And I've worked for companies that were private, and we needed every launch to be successful just to get to the next harvest, even though they were successful. Because last time I checked, even though you have a winery in Napa, it's still really expensive to have a winery in Napa. So price high with confidence. When you launch a brand, and you always look at the numbers, Eric, sweet spot's $55. Eric, the sweet spot's $60. Great, let's go out at 70. Let's go out at 75. You're just going to kill yourself. You're going to go on deaf ears. It's okay. Do you believe this is a quality wine? Yes. Who set the market at 65? Well, XYZ brand did. Well, we're better than them. It's okay. Ask for it. Ask for it. You'll see what happens. You'll get pushback 95% of the way. But if it's a quality wine and they believe in the plan and everything else we did, you're going to get the price. John Varvatos, $5,000 jacket. Well, for some reason, I feel like I need one of those jackets now. He did it. It's really a $3,000 jacket. But to have a John Varvatos on your back for a rock and roll guy is pretty cool. No discounts. Another very difficult thing, probably for many of us in the room. No discounts. And I mean no, zero. No. Now, some of the brands, I understand that this doesn't hold true for, like a, Kendall-Jackson Chardonnay or a Perrier-Jouët sometimes. When you make the decisions that you have to go to large retail, you have to discount sometimes. I understand the game. But as long as it looks like the retailer is discounting it, not the brand, number one. You're not giving discounts on quantity purchases. Again, I know this is difficult to kind of hear, but the brands that I managed that were very successful, and they went through their ups and downs, they did not offer discounts. Anytime someone came to me and said, give me 10 cases, or, sorry, can't say that, but I will sell more if you give me more, or a better price, the answer was no. Just great. Thank you so much for being creative. Sell what you got, and we'll figure out what we could do next. There's ways to get around that. There's ways to add value in other ways, but do not add it in your product. Again, you don't go to Bentley and get a discount, because then you feel like the product is not what it should be. You should be paying full price for Bentley. You should be. And if you get it as a discount, okay, great. You're wheeling and dealing. But at the end of the day, if you go to the dealer, it's all about what's special, what's new, what's different, what's unique to you. You're going to get this, and 99% of the people in Beverly Hills don't have this, and that's what people buy off of. And you got to keep that perception. The next thing is price increases over time. Even when price increases are not, I'm giving you a little bit of the ugly underbelly right now, okay? Might sound nefarious, but price increases over time. I've had brands where we knew we were going to take price increases even when I was sitting on inventory. Boy, that's a hard thing to do. You're sitting on a white wine that, has got a shelf life, and I'm taking price increases, small ones. Sometimes large ones, really, if they warrant it. Now, think about that. Why would I take a price increase? Because of the perception. Because of the perception. It's a little bit of a game. Now, again, I should take a step back, and this kind of sounds a little, a little marketing, but we believed in the product. We believed in the brand. It was high quality. We believed we were the best. All those things we talked about before. So I wouldn't take price increases on a brand that's damaged or the wine quality is not great. That's not right to me. I could stand there with, again, one of my bottles and say, we're taking a price increase, and I believe in it because it's just that special. We're below the market or right below the market. So you have to take price increases because of the perception that if somebody hears that every year there's a slight price increase coming around, it could be $1 a bottle, it could be 50 cents. I don't care what it is. As long as it's not going in the other direction, there is a perception that people will think, hey, there's a price increase. Something must be good. Something must be going on here that I got to jump on board with. Never chase volume. Now, when you have 30,000 cases to sell, or 30, and you don't know where to sell it all, that's usually the norm, by the way, 90% of the time. We don't know where we're going to sell all the wine. It's okay, though. You don't chase the volume by saying to your sales reps, hey, go sell 1,000 cases, and they look at you and say, I could only sell 800. Then I would say to them, great. Go out with 5. You have 1,000. That's in your pocket. Go out and tell everybody you have 500. And then when you get a couple bites, then all of a sudden you find out the 80-20 rule. Those 20% of the either wholesalers, retailer, brokers that are going to get on board, and then you give them the extra 100, 200, 300, 400, and you focus on them. You go into the market. You spend time with them. Now, the sales rep knew in their back pocket they had 1,000 cases. But to the perception of the outside world, they had 500. And oh my goodness, 100, 200, 300 would materialize for the top places. The normal thing to do is you have 50 markets or 30 markets, and you just spread them out based upon the size of the market. Worst way to do it. I've had awesome partners in Memphis that have been able to kill a pallet, and I've had terrible partners in Chicago that could not get through half a pallet, even though the market size should be a lot bigger. So it's all about putting out a smaller amount and then increasing it thereafter. So you're not chasing volume. You're not chasing it. You're managing the perception. Is something coming down on me here? Last, focus on quality of distribution. So we talked about this before. Don't go chasing things that you shouldn't be going to chase. Have a very, very focused plan. Now, one thing that I do before we launch any item, or if we're kind of reshaping a luxury item or re-strategizing, is everybody's very clear on the 6 things, you could say it in an elevator, of where this wine is to be sold, period. Where is this wine going to be sold? Eric, it's white tablecloth. It is, high-end wine shops, and da-da-da. They could say it right off the top of their head. So you have to have a very focused. If your distribution sheet is 10 long or 15 or 20 things long, good luck if everybody's going to remember that. You'll find it spread around the country like a sprinkler head. So very focused distribution. Have confidence and patience. Now, patience is probably the most important thing. And I kind of put this in number 8, right before number 9. The patience. Something that we don't have in the wine business, something we definitely don't have as businesses. And again, I understand that there's numbers involved, but you throw the baby out with the bathwater and you won't have anything at the end of the day. So, patience. Every time I launched a brand or redid a luxury brand or managed a luxury brand, it's all about time. Luxury does not happen overnight. It doesn't take fire. I've actually seen, $1,000 bottle of wines go flying out the door. Oh my God, it's the greatest brand in the world. And everybody's clamoring for it. And 5 years later, it's gone. It's like a comet. It'll burn a heavy light. You look like a rock star, and it'll burn out. My interest is in building brands that I've been able to manage that were 200 years old. Mumm Napa in Rutherford has to continue on thousands of years after I'm gone. And that's the way I manage that brand, not a comet. It's supposed to be here forever. And brand associations that lift the brand. Okay? So at Vineyard 29, we had brand associations with, like I said, Meadowwoods and French Laundry. We did that for a reason. We didn't get a lot out of it, but being able to have that partner association really lifted the brand. And again, those are real luxury examples. Every brand has examples in that way. So, other than being a little late, those are the things that I've learned from being in the luxury wine market. And I've been able to see a lot of great things, and I've seen a lot of disastrous things, things that broke my heart. Every one of those brands that I've managed have a piece of me. They were my babies at one point, even though they were owned by Mr. Jackson or a large company like the Ricard family, or little brands like Chuck McMinn and St. Helena. They're all special to me because I promise you, we're not in this business to get rich, many of us. We do this because we love it. We do this because we absolutely adore it. So have the confidence, have the patience, believe in what you're doing. Believe in the wine that you have. Believe in the brands. And if it's in your heart, then everybody will absolutely see what's in your head as you go out and sell these wines. So again, I apologize about being a little late, but it was for a good reason. It was a Gigan Das in my hand. And thank you very much. If anybody has any questions, I'll be around, okay? Thank you. That's my rock star fiance. So. Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah, here you go. Sorry, I should ask if you have any questions.
Okay, luxury side on the one hand. Now, if you had to do it all over again and focus on not being a luxury brand, would you be able to achieve the same profitability? You could not become luxury, just make believe for the moment. So now you're trying to market as a quality brand, but not a luxury brand. Use offering discounts.
Yes.
And et cetera.
Yes, you can make obviously great profits with a real quality brand doesn't have these qualities. But I found that the longevity is the only issue. Now, if you talk to some wine suppliers, they don't care about longevity. It's 5 years and out, 8 years and out. It's Gallo model of turning 15, 20 brands. That's okay. That's not luxury marketing to me. That's getting in and getting out. And maybe one will stick. Any luxury brand that I managed absolutely has the longevity, and that's why I focused on that. You can't have the longevity unless you do the things that I mentioned up there. That's the one thing. Yeah, sure.
I can't resist on DRC. I've been there. I've seen this relatively small piece of land. You marketed it, I assume? I've never tried it. Okay. Now, practically, but how good? There's the marketing perception, as you said, perception versus reality.
There's 1% of the wine world that will understand the quality of DRC. Us geeks the sommeliers, the critics, we all sit in a room, but you do a blind tasting with a bunch of other outstanding Burgundies, and yeah, it gets lost a little bit. Absolutely, and I've done it. I wouldn't say lost, but for you to pick it out, unless you really know the quality, the style of La Tâche or something like that, you'll figure it out. So it absolutely is perception. Is the wine excellent every year? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest grape juices in the world ever. But to actually hold a master sommelier to their hand over the fire and say, can you pick it out every time if they don't know the brand, is very difficult to do. So it is mostly perception. Now, they didn't actually work on their perception. Their perception happened for them. That scarcity, and that happens sometimes. You fall into success. They had all the things that I mentioned just happened to them. They got a rating. They got this frenzy behind them. It's almost like a famous musician that does great work but comes out of nowhere, and they become very famous pretty quickly, and that's what happened to them. So, yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the question, Evan. Thank you.